business, planning is obviously a huge pillar of something that I coach all of my clients around. Having some sort of, okay, this is what we think we're going to target, or even just a plan, like allowing yourself to pivot your plan, but having some sort of plan and outline can be really helpful of having that North Star and that purpose of what are you working towards every single day. I find that to be insanely beneficial because if I just let my brain do things day to day, I get sidetracked so very easily. And then a couple months in, I'll be like, oh, I didn't really do anything that I really wanted to do. So for me, having a plan in place is really helpful because it helps guide what I'm working on week to week, and it also builds in time for me to personally reflect on, okay, like how did the past couple of months or past year in business go? What can I learn from it, and what do I want to work on moving forward, or like what changes or tweaks do I need to make, or what are some really big exciting goals that I'm working towards, and how can I balance working on those with my current client load as well and my like current responsibilities, and do those make sense for the upcoming phase of life that I'm going to be in. Today I'm going to talk about annual planning versus quarterly planning. I have a couple of videos on this channel all about quarterly planning where I really go in depth and explain my process. So if you haven't checked those out, be sure to go back, listen to those. Today's video is going to be focused on what I do during annual planning that's a little different and the extent that I really focus on that versus just taking things quarter by quarter. Before I dive into the rest of the video, I actually have a free gift for you guys. It is my 10-page Google Doc template for you guys to make a copy, take it, make it your own, and it's all about quarterly planning for your creative business, and it'll walk you through my entire quarterly planning process. I've had so many people say how useful this has been for making sure that they have some semblance of an overall game plan strategy in place for each quarter, and it's really helped them with their productivity year to year. Be sure to grab that. It's down in the description down below. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question of how much of your time goes towards annual planning versus quarterly planning. So I would say that about 25% of my time will go towards annual planning, probably a little bit less. For me, annual planning really happens generally towards the end of December or the beginning of January. And quarterly planning is what the bulk of my like business planning time will go towards throughout the year. What I do at the beginning of the year is I make sure that I have 2-ish days blocked off at the end of every single quarter to just review what happened the past quarter and set some goals and markers in place and figure out what needs to tweak or change and what the upcoming quarter just looks like. And so I make sure that at the beginning of the year, I set those days aside for quarterly planning on my calendar before stuff starts to flow in. I'll make sure that if I already have some like vacations and stuff scheduled, hi Keej, how's it going? And that my quarterly planning days aren't conflicting with that. I do give myself the flexibility throughout the year. Like if those days need to move and shift on the calendar, that's totally fine, just so long as I have the 2 days blocked off each quarter so I can go through my quarterly planning process. I set aside some time to do annual planning, and what my annual planning is going to cover is setting aside those quarterly dates, taking a look at how the overall last year went, taking a look at how did I like navigate things. I go back through my quarterly planning docs for the last year just to give myself credit for everything that was accomplished, look at things that weren't accomplished, look at overall the business. Do I need to make any big shifts or changes for the upcoming year just based off of what happened the previous year? Take a look at how much income is projected, the team, and my systems and structure as well. So it's really just getting like an overall bird's eye view of the business, but really taking the time to not just look at the past quarter, but look at how the past year went. Because usually at this time, like by the end of December or by the beginning of January, I really can't remember what happened at the beginning of the year. So it's really cool to take the time to reflect on how did the whole year as a whole go, despite maybe how I'm feeling right now at the end of the year, and really take time to celebrate any of the big accomplishments, milestones, big shifts and changes that were made, and really take the time to soak that all in. I also treat my annual planning time as like my time to decompress. Like it lets me step outside of the day-to-day of the business and lets me really like just reflect, take some time alone. I make it really fun. I usually have like hot cocoa or like a spiked hot chocolate. And I usually just get super cozy with the fire or a candle running and just give myself like time and space to really decompress, rest, relax, and reflect. So like almost like an internal mini refresh or reset or retreat. That's the right word. So that's how I treat this time. My annual planning will take about a full week. It doesn't have to take that long. I just like to give myself the time and space to not have to actively think about everything that went on over the last year in 2 or 3 days, because that feels really intense. This time is completely blocked off from client work for me. Usually I am focusing on more life and fun things, about doing some reflection and some planning, some loose planning for the upcoming year as well. So usually the extent of the actual planning part for my annual planning is going to be going towards, first things first, I schedule in any upcoming travel that I have or any breaks that I want to take, and I get those keyed into the calendar. I then take a look at what is my anticipated client workload. Do I need to really be working on booking in more client spots or hiring more team support to support all of the client work? And then the basis of what my annual planning is going to be really looking at each quarter, like as a general guideline, what are some offers that I want to focus on for the specific quarter? So the way that I run my marketing strategy, I generally have 1 to 2 focuses of what I'm marketing or selling for each quarter. My brain really likes knowing what that is so that I can concentrate my marketing efforts on those 1 to 2 things instead of feeling like I need to market every single part of my business all the time, because I run a multi-passionate business and I have 3 different streams of revenue. It's helpful to be like, okay, in Q1, I'm focusing on selling out my coaching spots. In Q2, I'm really going to focus on selling out my editing spots, etc. So for me, having that structure overall is super helpful. And if I'm planning on doing anything that's more of a live event or anything like that, if it's a webinar or hosting a challenge or like going to a conference or contributing to a bundle or anything like that, it's helpful for me to know when those are going to fall throughout the year, just so that I can make sure that I have enough time leading up to those live events to make sure that I'm focusing on marketing those, etc. So getting those live campaigns or weeks that I'm really going to focus on the marketing of my services on the calendar beforehand helps me really plan out throughout the rest of the year to know, okay, like these couple of weeks are going to be really busy, so I don't want to try to fit too much other stuff during that time. And planning for enough rest right after a really intense season too is really helpful when I'm doing it beforehand rather than after the fact. It stops me from overcommitting throughout the year because I already have those time boundaries set in place. After that, I'm really looking at what are some bigger business projects that I could potentially focus on. So each quarter, I generally have 2 to 3 big projects that I'm working on that are moving the business forward. It could be something like refining my client experience in a certain way, but for me, I use those business projects as like almost like I treat those like a client. So I, at the beginning of the year, pull out what are some things that make sense for this year of like business projects to potentially work on. And then every single quarter, I'll pick out what those actually are, what makes sense for the upcoming quarter. And depending on the year and depending on how much client work I already have scheduled in, I'm sometimes able to decide what those projects, at least for like Q1 and Q2, are mostly gonna be. I leave Q3 and Q4 because things obviously adjust and shift throughout the year. For example, for this upcoming year, for Q1, I know that I'm focusing pretty heavily on YouTube and getting that up and going. So that's my business project that I have on the to-do list. And then same thing goes of building up my email list is a huge goal for this upcoming year. And getting consistent with YouTube is part of that. Getting consistent with sharing some of my freebies on Instagram week to week is a huge part of that. So those are 2 of my big business projects for Q1 and Q2 that I've already mapped out time on the calendar to work on. So let me know if this video was helpful. I definitely have some more that are really focused and go way more in depth and detail around the quarterly planning process. And if you want that free guide of the annual planning or the quarterly planning process, feel free to just comment down below. You can just put in year in all caps or quarterly or quarter, and I'll make sure that I send those over your way. But thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you guys on the next episode.